I got an 8 on the listening section of the IELTS. It is a tricky section to master because you only get one chance to listen the audio and then, based on what you just heard, answer a couple of questions correctly. In this video, I am going to share everything that you need to know about becoming an effective listener and acing the IELTS listening section. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Raheel. I'm an entrepreneur and a product leader currently living and working in Dubai. In this video, I'm going to share everything that you need to know to ace the IELTS listening section. This video is divided into 4 parts. Number 1, we'll dive into the fundamentals, understand the structure of the exam. Number 2, we'll dive into each question type that you'll face during the exam and how to best tackle them. The third section is a strategy that I've devised to prepare for the exam, and then the strategy when you're in the exam room. And the fourth section is all about a 30 days plan that you can follow, and I guarantee that you'll ace the listening section. And as always, let's start with the fundamentals. So the listening test is the same for IELTS academic test takers and general test takers. You get to hear 4 recordings with 10 questions each. So in total, you have 40 questions that you have to answer in 30 minutes. These questions test your ability to understand the main ideas and the concepts from the recordings, whether you understand the conversation between native speakers and the ideas being discussed and the development of those ideas. Now, these recordings are a mix of monologues and conversations of native speakers. And remember that you only get to hear them once. Now, each recording has a specific purpose. So for example, recording number 1 is usually a conversation between 2 people talking about something from the everyday life. Recording number 2 is a monologue on something from our everyday life. It could be a speech on utilities or a speech on inflation. Now, recording number 3 is a more complicated conversation between 2 to 4 people talking about a very specific topic. So for example, a university professor having a conversation with students on a university assignment. And then recording number 4 will again be a monologue on something academic. So for example, a lecture on a theoretical concept from physics or from biology. Now that we understand the fundamentals, let's dive into different types of questions that you'll face during the exam. Now let's talk about different types of questions that you might encounter in the listening section. Number 1, you have multiple choice questions. These are questions where you have to choose the correct answer from given options. You might pick one option or more than one option that might be the correct answer. Then you have matching questions in which you have to match items from the recording onto the paper. So for example, the recording might be describing 5 or 6 different buildings. Then you have to match which description matches which option. Then you have labeling questions in which a workspace might be described. Then based on the information from the passage, you have to visually allocate and label each area that the recording was talking about. Then you have summary completion questions, which is you have to fill missing information based on what you just heard. So you really have to focus on the facts and figures from the recording and write them as it is to complete the summary. Then you have sentence completion questions. Again, you have to hear the recording and just complete the sentences based on whatever the question is demanding. And finally, you have short answer questions, which are again comprehension type questions in which the question might ask you something that was said in the recording and you have to pick the right option. Now that we understand different question types, now we can dive into the strategy that we can employ to prepare for the listening section and then ace it. Now in this section, we'll dive into the strategies that you can use to better prepare yourself for the listening section. Number 1, practice listening once. Since the real exam, in the real exam, you'll only listen to the recording once. So while you're practicing, get in the habit of listening very carefully and listening to the audio only once before you answer each question. Then, since you're only listening once, you really have to stay focused. So basically, really focusing on what is being said. Since you get the questions beforehand, try to not get stuck on a single question. Okay, if you don't know the answer to the first question and you're already into the fifth question, forget about the first question and come back to it later when you get break between multiple different recordings. Then you really have to analyze each question very carefully. Since you get the questions before you hear the recordings, utilize that time to really understand the question. Try to identify important keywords from the question so that you know what information to focus on when you're listening that recording. And while you're reading this question, our fourth strategy is to predict answers. So when you've read the questions before, when you're reading, you know what to listen for. Without even reading the options, you can try to come up with an answer based on what you just heard. The idea is not to guess. The idea is to have an understanding of this is the answer that I'm looking for. Does it confirm my analysis or not? And then finally, you have to practice under exam condition, which basically means you have to time yourself, you have to listen once, you really have to be comfortable with the types of questions, and you really have to understand the format of the listening section so you can better ace it. So practicing under exam conditions is going to be the biggest winner for you. Now that we understand multiple different strategies to better prepare, now let's dive into a 30 days plan that we can follow so we can all ace the listening section. Alright, now let's dive into our 30 days plan. This 30 days plan is divided into 4 weeks. Week number 1 and week number 2 is all about developing your listening capabilities. I want you to start week number 1 by taking a mock test. Take a mock test under real exam conditions and try to understand where you currently stand. I really want you to focus on what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what type of questions you find easy, what type of questions you find hard. And then I want you to start developing those listening skills. The best way to do that is by watching documentaries. So week number 1 and week number 2, I really want you to focus on watching documentaries, not for the sake of watching, but sit down, listen to a documentary, have a notepad, start making notes about every single fact and detail that you're learning from that specific documentary. Now you're also becoming an effective listener, but at the same time, you're learning valuable information about the world around you. Now, as we go into week number 3 and week number 4, it's all about intensive practice. Every single day, you're going to do one mock test followed by a documentary. And by week number 4, I want you to do at least 6 or 7 past papers and mock tests and watch around 3 to 4 documentaries. As you go into week number 4, we're really going to focus on intensive practice again. And this is going to be done by one day you're going to watch a documentary, next day you're going to take a mock test, and you're going to alternate. Now, the key here is how do you get feedback, right? Have a peer group, join a couple of groups on Facebook, LinkedIn. If you need help, feel free to email me. I'll try to get some time to help you guys out. If you need extensive sort of feedback on your listening abilities. But by joining peer review groups, you'll be able to get a lot of feedback on how to further improve your listening skills by either talking to each other or by doing mock tests together. But you have to remember that this approach requires a lot of structure and a lot of discipline. So recapping our 4 weeks plan, week 1 and week 2 is all about developing our listening skills. And then week number 3 and week number 4 is all about practicing. And I'm 100% sure if you follow this plan, I guarantee you will get a very high band in your IELTS listening section. Well, there you have it, guys. Everything you need to know about acing the listening section of the IELTS. Let's quickly recap. We discussed the fundamentals. We discussed different types of questions that you might encounter in the listening section. We talked about different strategies to best prepare mentally for the IELTS listening section, and then I shared a 30 days plan that you can follow to best prepare for it by watching documentaries, by doing a lot of mock tests under real exam circumstances. Now you have to remember that consistency is your friend. You have to follow a structured approach. And since the listening section is a tricky one because you only get to hear the recordings once, you really have to build your focusing abilities and you really have to build your attention span. So if you're preparing for the IELTS, I'm pretty sure if you follow my 30 days plan, you will get a very high score. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and comment and share this with your friend. And if you're about to give the IELTS, I would love to know what score you got after watching my video. Thank you so much.